Hello everyone, my name is Stephanie. Some of you may know me as @ArchiveSteph on Instagram. First things first, I know it's been a while. Pesky COVID is a little to blame, as is the adjustment to life as a self-employed person, as is the dreaded diabetes. A little more about all of that later. Life is what happens when you're busy making plans, hey? This is the second podcast of the Archive Cupboard, an occasional podcast all about archives, disability, archivists, local history, and what I like to call the spaces between. Welcome to the Archive Cupboard. As I mentioned in episode 1, I started the cupboard to talk about the stories I discovered in my day job as an archivist, and also in my regular life, which I suppose includes the very significant hobby of history. History is my hobby. I love it, and especially the history of individuals. In a previous working life, I was concerned mainly with the topic of disability, especially as a disabled person myself. I learned so much about a world I didn't really know existed, and as a result, so much about myself, but also about true heroes, for want of a better word, in the disability world who achieve remarkable things and also happen to be disabled. One such person was disability activist and Birmingham girl Hilary Pole, who seems to have been forgotten by the disability history narrative, but was very much a key player in disability activism when she was alive, and led a phenomenal active life, and also happened to have a disability that meant she could only move and communicate using her big toe. I learned about Hilary from the archive I worked in at the time, and the works of Group Captain Leonard Cheshire, a Second World War disabled Group Captain of RAF Bomber Command, who achieved the VC and dedicated his life, after being retired from the RAF on a disability pension, to the world of disabled people. He learned about Hilary and wanted to meet her, but sadly that wasn't to be. But learning about her from the papers prompted him to say, "One particular disabled person who comes first to my mind when I think of this aspect of the desire of a disabled person to put his or her life to good use is a girl called Hilary Pole." Hilary was absolutely determined to live, and not only to live but to make something out of her life. She turned to using her typewriter, to launching appeals to collect equipment for other disabled people, to give them back a measure of independence. And that was Hilary's life. Now I see in all that a great beauty, a beauty of personality, a beauty of how the human spirit can triumph over adversity, and in fact is the nobler and the greater when faced with a challenge, with danger, with difficulty. As some context, Hilary was at university in Liverpool training to be a PE teacher when she was hit with troubling symptoms. She was getting over a breakup, and at first it was contributed to the stress of this, but as it turned out she had a condition called myasthenia gravis, which eventually caused her to be completely paralysed. She ended up living in Birmingham Hospital, completely reliant upon a ventilator, and with the ability to communicate only left in a slight movement of her big toe. The energy and determination that made her want to teach PE was channeled into retaining her active life, albeit in different and difficult physical circumstances, and Hilary became an active campaigner and fundraiser for disabled people. An electronics engineer adapted an electronic possum machine to be activated by a little micro switch on a board that was strapped to her foot, and by operating that switch she could turn on her record player and her radio. But in addition to that, she could type, and she learned to type using the new possum. You'd talk to her and she'd answer you on the typewriter. She then moved on to using her typewriter to send out appeals to people to give money to buy equipment for other disabled people, and she organised fundraising, including jumble sales from her bed. In 1973, Hilary Pole was awarded an MBE for her services to disabled people, and she passed away a few years later in 1975. And a tribute to her life and achievements appeared in the Cheshire Smile, a magazine published by the residents of Cheshire Homes, a charity started by Group Captain Cheshire. After learning about Hilary, I decided to hunt for any more information I could find about her life, and I came across the archive of King Edward VI High School for Girls, where Hilary had been a pupil in the 1950s. I met with archivist Charlotte over Zoom, where I found out more about Hilary's early life and the fascinating world of school archives. Here is our conversation.
Charlotte Gallant. I'm the Foundation Archivist at King Edward VI Schools in Birmingham Foundation. So it's not just the archives of one school. There's actually 14 schools within this foundation.
Oh, amazing.
I know. And it's a whole range. There's two independent schools, King Edward Boys and King Edward Girls High School. The boys dates back to 1552, which is when King Edward sort of issued the charter to sort of promote education for the youth of Birmingham. And then during the sort of early 1700s, they started looking at establishing what they called petty schools, which were schools for sort of elementary education. And then with sort of the Industrial Revolution, this kind of generated this huge scale kind of education of boys and girls, but only from sort of elementary level. And it wasn't until 1883, so actually 140 years ago, that they decided, right, we're going to open up grammar schools. So they created King Edward's High School for Girls, which is eventually what Hilary attended, and then grammar schools in Aston, Five Ways, and Handsworth. And it's kind of just expanded from there. So these grammar schools are still going on today. We have 6 now in total. And then we also have 4 academy schools as well, which was part of a big kind of revolutionizing, if that's the correct word, of education in Birmingham to get basically more equal opportunities for people from sort of a poorer background, people that might not have that kind of opportunity to sort of school, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because when Hilary went, it was a grammar school, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So she had to pass her 11 plus, am I right?
Yeah, something that's hated now, I think, by all accounts. But yes, so no, she attended the girls' school, which is very closely linked with the boys' school. They shared the same building in the 1800s, and then the school eventually got so big it had to be moved out to Edgbaston. I don't know if you know Birmingham at all.
Not very well. I've just been looking at the map at where Hilary lived, because she lived in Halesowen. I've heard of Halesowen.
Yeah. So I don't live too far away from there. I live in Dudley.
Oh, yeah.
And Halesowen, mileage-wise, it's probably only about 5 or 6 miles from Birmingham. But especially with the traffic, it can be quite a nightmare to get to. So I imagine she would have taken the bus. I'm pretty sure that's what it says in the book.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, she went on the bus. And I found it interesting that her mum was a teacher, but a primary school teacher. Because I know I've seen from the school record, Hilary's school record, that she moved around a fair bit. And I've just been swatting to see why from her autobiography. And I think it's because her mum was a teacher. So when she started off school, she went to a private school, like a prep school. And then when her brothers started, they went to the same primary school, local primary school. And then her mum started working as a primary school teacher. So she went to then the school that her mum taught at, which was different to the other one, all very complicated. But she seems to have moved around quite a fair bit for being a local girl. Yeah, and then she started at your school when she was 11, am I right?
Yeah, and that was in 1950. 1950, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, the world has changed so much since then, but it goes into great detail in her book about the things that she was interested in. She seems like quite a distinct character, which I think probably set her in good stead later on in life when she had quite a few challenges to overcome, to say the least.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what traces are of Hilary in the archives. Have you got a fair few things from her younger days?
So there's not a huge amount. Not so much evidence of Hilary. We've got a few photographs of her because fortunately she was on a few sports teams and she was a prefect. So quite often there'd be photographs from sort of the team days and things like that. And most of what we have of her sort of mentions of her in the school newsletters. So, for example, in 1953, she was on the committee for the field team, so athletics. And so that was entered into the school newsletter. She would write a report for the hockey club. She was a big part of that. So she was the treasurer in 1956, just before she left. And then equally, the school newsletters would record bits about her playing. They said she had a really hard hit. She was a good all-rounder. And then that she was chosen to attend the Warwickshire Junior County trials as well, which was quite
right.
big.
Yeah. So she was good. She was good at hockey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hockey, badminton, rounders, all sorts, really.
Did they play cricket? Because I know she was a big cricket fan. They talk about it a lot, and her dad played cricket, but now I suppose not, because sport's very gendered then still.
Absolutely. I mean, outside of school, yeah, absolutely. But certainly within the girls' school, not at that time, unfortunately, which is such a shame.
Yes, it is. I'd have loved to have learned to play cricket at school. But even in my day, no, I'm not that young, I can pretend. But no, it was rounders, which is really, not my thing. Anyway, she was also really into nature. Her biographer talks about her going and on these long walks and collecting strange animals and kind of stealing local dogs and cats that dared to go for a wander on their own because she thought they were astray and begging her mum to keep them. I was a bit like that as a child, so I have every sympathy for her mum. Is there anything in the school newsletters about that? Did she do anything? No reports or anything.
Again, she was part of one of the walking groups.
Oh, okay.
So, and towards the end of, before she would leave the school, she was part of the organising committee. But really, there's no kind of greater detail on that other than she was part of that committee.
Okay. But it's amazing. It is a shame. It's amazing that you've got all these records because they don't usually survive.
No, and it's just thank goodness for sort of digitization in a way that not only do we have all these newsletters, that we've got them all scanned and they're text searchable, and it's a really great resource for researchers such as yourself or anyone doing any genealogical studies, basically, to try and find more out of that.
Yeah. So asking, I'm just intrigued about how the archive is set up. So I know you're in the foundation office at the school, and I have been having a look online. But what kind of? Tell me a little bit about the kind of things you can find online about the archive and what you've actually got there.
Okay. So the archive is a bit of a work in progress, digitally speaking. We were really, really lucky in that in 2012, an old pupil, Margaret Davies, left us quite a bit of money to do archive projects. And we thought what a brilliant idea it would be to get it out to the public, not just for the girls' school, because she was an old girl where Hilary went, but for all of the schools in the foundation. So there is a website for each school, and on that website we've digitized all of the newsletters. There's a few gaps, there always are, we rely so heavily on old girls and boys donating their old newsletters to us, so there are a few gaps, but not many. And what I'm doing at the moment is starting to go through all the photographs and try and get those up online as well. Just because I think that sparks more of a memory for a lot of people. A lot of what we do for archiving is sort of reminiscence work, and I think it's so important to kind of keep those memories of school, good or bad, alive, really.
Yes, it's a very good point, because everybody remembers school, don't they? Whatever they remember about it, and it is nice to go down memory lane.
And even if you didn't have the best time at school, it's still nice to remember how things were when you were smaller. So, the general area, or maybe there was a subject you really liked or a teacher you particularly got on with. So, and I think having a picture of the school as it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s kind of just sparks that memory, really.
And Hilary must have liked school, because she went on to train to be a PE teacher. And she did dance. I think dance was what she ended up specialising in. Yeah, which I think is quite unusual.
Especially as there's no kind of mention of it in the newsletters, but then from reading the book, it seemed like she was very keen to be, was it a vet?
Yeah, she
And
wanted to be a vet initially, and then
with the
yeah,
cat.
yes, and then she had some bargain, didn't she, with a local boy that he was going to be a farmer and she was going to be a vet, and they were going to be some kind of animal power couple, but that didn't work out. But yeah, she ended up going into what we would call now special education, but
Mm.
had to stop because of disability, which was a shame. But I think it comes across from what you've been saying, and also in the book, how energetic she was,
Oh,
which
absolutely.
yeah, full of
Yeah.
energy. I mean, it's exhausting. I know she was young, but it's exhausting reading it. I think, oh, good grief! I mean, a real powerhouse of energy.
Absolutely. And I mean, it was quite an unusual time for the school as well, sort of the early 50s, because you were still sort of coming out of that kind of post-war kind of depression. There was still rationing going on. And then obviously the death of the king, coronation of a new queen. And she actually visited the school in 1955. So Hilary might have seen her actually visiting. And then for the school itself, there was when Hilary started, the first headmistress Hilary would have experienced actually died in post.
Oh
Um,
wow!
yeah, not at the school, but it was sort of very sudden. And then there was this kind of interim period, and I think it was 1953. Then a new headmistress came in that made quite a lot of changes and was very kind of science focused. She was a zoologist, so
Oh, amazing.
that's possibly where the kind of the link with veterinary science and things maybe came from, in that it was kind of more pushed rather than the traditional kind of. I mean, the girls did Latin as well and things like that, but there was also that kind of cookery, needlework kind of stuff hanging on. And
Yes,
I think,
wife skills.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think the new kind of headmistress was sort of pushing more for women in science and things like that. So
Oh, that's
that's
interesting.
purely theoretical, but that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, women's education as a thing, especially grammar school education,
Mm.
it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting to see kind of what kind of effect that had on the careers that people went for. Because I think if you went to grammar school in those days, there was an expectation for a girl, even if it was what you did before you got married, to actually have a career of some kind, no matter how short-lived. Because Hilary and
Yeah.
her friends, they all went on to become teachers. So it was kind of, it's that environment, isn't it, where it's like you pick a profession.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the girls' schools are an independent school. Sorry, not a grammar school.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I might not have explained it well. Um, and there were certainly at the time a big push for trying to get girls into kind of Oxford and Cambridge, but there wasn't much of it at this period. It was still quite a relatively new thing. There's some horrible statistic, and I can't actually remember it off the top of my head, but it was something like even in the 1950s, Cambridge weren't really accepting female
No,
applicants.
no.
30. I can find that if you want the actual date. I've kind of been looking into this.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean it's I went to Durham University. I mean, I just went to a comprehensive school, but the college I ended up getting into was a girls' college, and they they had all sorts of trouble over the years, and quite well, they were still having it when I was there, and that was in the late 90s, early 2000s, really, with girls' education and kind of inbuilt sexism and
oh
covert
yeah,
sexism.
which is
Um,
still kind of prevalent today in many ways.
yeah, yeah,
As
it
bad as it
is.
was, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to remember the college that Hilary went to. I think it was Edge Hill in Liverpool she went to, which was a teacher training college. Yes, it says here she was a top competitor in sports. Yes, it's I.M. Marsh College of Physical Education in Liverpool.
Any idea why she went to Liverpool? Was it just
I'll read the bit out here. So she's in her final year and she's doing her A levels. She goes to the Dalefort Field Centre on a marine biology expedition with her teacher Gladys Wilson. So she has a good time there. They become beachcombers for science and they find things on the beach. says they plunged into more than study. The first year, some of them went a little mad, decided to dance in the moonlight and then take a moonlight swim. Probably not very good for health and safety these days.
Bloody cold, I imagine.
Yes. Oh, she's worn a controversial outfit. Maroon jeans,
Ooh.
scarlet sweater and socks with a maroon smock.
Oh, wow.
Yes, in 1956, it was almost a crime, certainly a faux pas, to put such colours together. Again, a rebel, capital letters.
Yeah. Well, quite the time, considering you're coming up to the 60s, which was a huge kind of era for fashion and
Yeah.
colours. And
well, it was clearly a thing for Hilary because throughout she's describing her outfits, and she describes outfits she wears on dates with various boyfriends. And then when she's living in the hospital and is really quite unwell, she still picks her outfits every day and has her nails polished and her hair done. And you sent me that photograph. So I've been looking for a photograph of her, and I have not been able to find them because I've been thinking about Hilary and doing a podcast on Hilary for about 3 years now. And I saw on the photograph, you can see she's wearing jewellery and she's had her hair done and she's got nail polish on. And that is very much Hilary. So yes, wearing the maroon and scarlet outfit on a beach in Wales sounds like her.
Blend in. This is the thing you kind of get from reading about her. She's always going to stand out. She's always going to do what she thinks is right.
Yeah, very, very strong personality, and she needed it, to be honest, because I'm amazed by how she coped with her health condition, because we've talked about this before, haven't we? That kind of real strength of personality got her through.
Absolutely. And what I kind of liked was that she sort of kept in contact with the school, and the school children would actually come and visit her, which I thought was fabulous. She's engaging with everybody. It's, how do you put it into words?
Yes, it's difficult to kind of because we've both read the book, haven't we? And we've read her newsletters and things. It's quite difficult to put into words how amazing it is, because we talk about people who are disabled and people who've got who are paralyzed or can't speak, and Hilary was all of those things. I mean, she could only communicate using her big toe, and she lived in Queen Elizabeth Hospital for nearly 10 years before moving home with her parents. And it's quite hard to kind of think about how you would cope with that yourself, not being able to communicate. And she had such a huge social life. I mean, she maintained friendships. As you said, she kept in contact with the schools. She mentored people, other people who have the same disability and health condition as her. She set up a charity. She did fundraising raffles and wrote poetry in newsletters, all with just being able to move one toe. And she could see, but she couldn't open her eyelids, could she? Yeah, she was incapacitated completely. And I think she had, yeah, she didn't let it stop her. She was just like, this is really hard. And she has obviously had days where she felt really unwell, but she just like lived her life. So she's one of those people who I've met working in disability archives who has stayed with me, because I think her story's pretty phenomenal. I'm surprised that she's not more well known.
This is what surprises me as well.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be while she was alive, she was very well known, and now that sort of time has passed, it's just faded slightly, which is such a shame. So it's lovely for you to, because I wouldn't have had the time to research her if I hadn't had someone interested in her. So this is fabulous. Thank you for sort of.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm hoping to do her justice. I'm going to have a think about, because I don't want to, talk for too long. Sorry, my phone's going crazy. I'm just going to switch it off. It should be fine though, but I've forgotten. I've kind of gone off on a tangent on what I was talking about. Why she went to Liverpool, didn't we? So we've got to the cat. We've got to the dead cat that we keep alluding to, which is on page 47.
Oh, it's so grim, but
It is
perfectly
disgusting.
understandable. Yeah, I think anyone seeing that would actually think twice about becoming a vet.
Yeah.
So,
So for the uninitiated, if this makes it into the podcast, she sees a cat get run over and get up from being run over and kind of flap about with its insides hanging out. That puts her off being a vet.
understandably.
Yes, that's quite disgusting. Anyway, let's go past this. And remember, she must have communicated all of this to Dorothy or to someone, because I think this book was written posthumously because it addresses her death at the end, which is quite sad. So I think she did some writing herself. She kept a diary
Yes.
up to a certain point. But also she had a lot of people who knew her, and a very close friend was a chap called Roger Jeffcoat, who is in the very first chapter, and he was the engineer who set her up with her possum. So a possum was a adaptive machine that, and they still exist. They help a disabled person control their environment, and they are engineered to an individual. So Hilary's possum helped her switch lights on and off, open and close curtains, helped her with her typewriter because she wrote using a switch powered by her big toe on a typewriter. I think that was set up using a possum machine. She could listen to music because she was a big music fan, especially classical music. She could listen to the radio, so she could listen to her cricket matches and tennis matches on the radio now. But he's still around, and he's a fascinating chap.
Well, I love his opening chapter when, yeah, there's very sort of confrontational security guard, but as
Yeah,
soon as his name is mentioned, oh, hi, yeah, she's lovely, yeah, go on
yeah.
in.
Oh, Hilary.
Then, yeah, just goes back to sort of how communicative she was and how well known she was within the Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah,
I
I
wonder.
asked.
Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I asked Roger about Hilary, and he just said, "Oh, she was wonderful. She was fantastic. She was a great girl." So, that it just goes to show, just because you're disabled or you're paralyzed or, something's happened to you and you're not physically your old self, you're still you, and you can still maintain friendships and make new friends.
God,
Um, yeah, so, it's one of those stories that really does make you think. Anyway, still trying to find out why she goes to Liverpool.
I mean, maybe it was just one of those things, sort of circumstances, and
Yeah, I
that was
think
it.
so. I think it says here Miss Jakes, one of her teachers, recommended the I.M. Marsh College of Physical Education in Liverpool. She was a close friend of Miss Crabb, the principal. So that's why.
There
So
we go.
the principal's friend ran it. And it said, to Hilary's delight, the courses offered there seemed tailor-made for her. Gymnastics, dance, biology, physiology, anatomy, English, music, art, and education. A 3-year course, and it had the best reputation for dance. So she applied and got in. So went from Birmingham to Liverpool.
Brilliant. Which is about what, 3 hours, if that?
Yeah. I mean, what a place to be in Liverpool. Though I suppose, yeah, I mean, I used to live there. I love Liverpool. But she would have been there when it was a real naval, port town. And there was, lots of exciting things going on. But I
Oh,
don't know if I mentioned, I'm just keeping an eye on the time, that I came across Hilary's story because Leonard Cheshire, the founder of Leonard Cheshire, um, started mentioning her in his speeches.
oh,
And I was like, who's Hilary Pole? So I Googled it, as you do, and it came up with your little biography on your
oh, the
website.
one on the website, yeah.
Yeah. And I just, then it came up with a book on Amazon. So I thought I could get a copy for £2. So I thought I'll read that just, because I'm interested anyway. And yeah, I was fascinated. But yes, and he was trying to he was a filmmaker. He wanted to make a film of Hilary, but I think by the time Hilary came on his radar, she died or was dying. So I think it was in the 70s. I think she died in the early 70s. So it never happened. But also I got the feeling that she wasn't that keen to be filmed.
Yeah.
Which is probably understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's a bit intrusive, and also by that point she'd been living back home, so she's got other people to take into consideration. But yeah, he obviously thought that she was a phenomenal person, being able to lead a full life and achieve all this stuff, just being able to move her big toe. It is really. I mean,
is incredible.
Yeah, and she couldn't even breathe for herself. So yeah, I think that's the thing that I find so amazing about her strength of personality, is that she talks about being married to a ventilator. She calls him JW, and he keeps her alive, JW, but he packs up at like any opportunity. And she just takes it in her stride. They would have engineers on call, so if it would decide to break at like 3:30 in the morning, there was always somebody to call to come and fix it. I mean, would that happen today? I don't know.
It's just what a sense of humor to have.
Yeah. Yes, I mean the technology's a lot better now. I suppose you'd have backups and things
Probably,
now.
Yeah.
But then, and I think Roger, who I'm going to go and speak to, I think he ended up inventing her a ventilator, because he was an inventor and engineer. So I'm hopeful that I'll find out a little bit more about all the devices and things that she had after that.
Oh, fabulous.
Thank you to Charlotte for taking the time to speak to me about Hilary's school career. I think it really brought her personality alive. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to interview Roger Jeffcott about his pioneering engineering work with Possum, but I did get the chance to speak to him on the telephone. He wrote the first chapter of Dorothy Clark Wilson's Hilary, The Brave World of Hilary Pole, which he assured me included all his thoughts and memories of Hilary. In fact, he put Hilary and her family in touch with Dorothy to write the book, so thank you, Roger. The book is of its time, but gives a vivid portrait of an impressive person. Hilary's legacy continues in the work of the Sequel Trust, previously the Possum Users Association of the 1960s, that Hilary helped establish. I hope this glimpse into her world encourages you to find out more about her work and life. King Edward VI High School for Girls Digital Archives can be searched at https://www.kingedwardvi-highschoolforgirls-archives.org. Now we have come to the end of episode 2 of the Archive Cupboard podcast. I can only say I'm sorry that it took so long to come around. COVID for the second time, life with diabetes, including a very small eye operation, and adjusting to my new freelance life has thwarted well-intentioned plans, but I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. The theme of episode 3 and the time has yet to be decided. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or would like to contribute, then please contact me on Instagram at ArchiveSteph. You'll always find me there, or on my website www.archivesteph.uk. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.